Heroes are an inspiring group of people, every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen to the everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. The doctor saving lives at your local hospital, the war veteran down the street who risked his lives for our freedom, the police officers and firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling, but there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer, the ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what? I can fix that. I can help people, and I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world, others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks of the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back to The Hero Show. My name's Richard Matthews. I'm here in a new setting today out in Santa Barbara, California. I've got Riana Milne on the line. Are you there, Riana?
Yeah. Hi, Richard. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So glad to have you here. Let me do a quick introduction so people know who you are. So Rihanna is a certified global life dating and relationship coach, which is super cool. I saw some of your topics that we have that we could talk about today. It seems really interesting. Number one best-selling author. You have host of your own podcast. You have a daily brief on Alexa. And you've been certified as a trauma and addictions professional and licensed for over 19 years, you said, in Florida?
As a licensed mental health counselor, both New Jersey and Florida. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That has got to be a tough gig.
I love it. I love what I do. I love the coaching now.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So what I want to start off with, and we start all the shows off with, is basically, what are you known for now? What is it that people come to Rihanna for? What do they come to you for help with?
Sure. I help people, which is 90% of adults, overcome childhood and love trauma and help them heal to create the life that they desire and then have the love that they deserve.
So dive into that a little bit. What kind of traumas are we talking about?
Okay. Well, there are 10 childhood traumas.
Neglect, that kind of thing?
I could name all 10 because it's really fascinating to know what they are, because most people say, well, I wasn't traumatized. I don't fit in the 90%. Then they hear the list and they're like, oh, yeah, I do have a few. And this list was, there was a list developed by Kaiser Permanente, which they call the ACE test, ACE, which stands for Adverse Childhood Events. But my list came out a few years ago from my direct experience as working as a psychotherapist, addiction specialist with adolescents in the school as a SAC counselor, student assistance counselor. And I worked with every grade there. And I was the counselor in the schools that helped the kids with their emotional upset, or if they were labeled ADHD or oppositional defiance, I was the counselor that they saw. So that's great, kindergarten all the way through college, and sat on child study team. So I've been working in the trauma field, not thinking I'm working with trauma, but every position I worked with in the adolescent unit of a hospital, I was seeing teenagers that were cutting, suicidal, using drugs, running away. You know, they came from traumatic homes. They didn't want to be there. So my list is a checklist of 10 items, and I'll be glad to go into that because it's pretty fascinating. Again, when I do this, if you want to make a note of it, it's if you want to meet with me later, I would be asking, how many of the traumas do you think you have? And again, this is not a list about shame or blame, because when you hear the list, again, as a child, you're just a product of your environment. There's not much you can do. I don't want to say you were a victim, but you were there and these events happened around you. So the first one, as a child, did you experience your caregivers or parents that first had any addiction? So we think of drugs and alcohol, but there's 10 addictions are drugs, alcohol, sex, meaning a parent was a chronic cheater, porn, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, TV watching, workaholism, and gaming. So there's 11 addictions right there that could have been more important than you. Yes, as an addiction specialist, we know that there's more addictions than drugs and alcohol. That's just the top of the list. Okay, second, verbal abuse. If you watched your parents fighting, or verbal abuse came towards you. So you did not hear the words, I loved you. You weren't given compliments. You had verbal put downs. You never felt good enough. Or you were yelled at, or if the parents were mad, they would be stonewalling you, meaning shutting down, not talking to you for hours or days. That's forms of verbal abuse. Emotional abuse or neglect is number 3. Number 4 is physical abuse, like beatings, rape, or molestation, and those two could have happened inside or outside of the home. The next trauma would be abandonment. There's 2 types, fault and no fault abandonment. Now, I name no fault abandonment as if a parent dies early. It's certainly not their fault, but the child is still abandoned and feels traumatized by that. If a parent goes off to war, or if a parent works out of the home for long periods of time. And that was a situation for me. I found out, we all did, my family, that my father was FBI and CIA. Many years later, unfortunately, he was dying of cancer when we got letters from the president thanking my father for all his years of services for our country. But I remember as a little girl asking, when's daddy coming home? And my mom would be very upset and say, well, I don't know. So she was left raising 5 kids, mostly on her own. And we'd be always waiting for dad to come home. That's a form of abandonment. Okay. And then fault abandonment would be if there was a divorce and the parent never really sees the child, or is inconsistent, or breaks the promise to see the child, or the parent never was in the child's life to begin with, and the child grows up wondering who that other parent was. Or even if you are visiting your parent and they choose to ignore you, the dad is spending more time with his new girlfriend or watching football on TV, you're still not feeling a bond, right? So that's type of fault abandonment. The next one is if you were adopted, part of foster care, or needed to go live in another household because your parents couldn't keep you in a household. That could have even been living with grandma or an aunt or a family friend. Next one, trauma number 7, is one of the most common, and that was if you grew up being feeling not good enough. So you might have been bullied at the school, not picked for sport teams, skinny and gawky, or you were overweight kid. For some reason, you just didn't feel you fit in. Yeah. Next one would be sibling trauma. You perceived one of your siblings to be the golden child. So they could have been more attractive, more athletic in prowess, more handsome or beautiful, and you saw that your parents gave them more alkalides, time, or attention. And another could be your sibling was born with a medical issue, so they demanded more of mom's and dad's time because they were ill. Or your sibling could have bullied you. Yeah. Number 9 is family trauma. And from a longer list, I brought in also community trauma. So community trauma would be our school shootings, our mass shootings, or natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, fires, mudslides that are wiping out communities. And of course, this is devastating for adults, but can you imagine little children going through this fear and horror of running from a fire, that's trying to catch up behind them or something like that. Family trauma would be if a parent's incarcerated, if you remember growing up in lack or poverty, if you had to move a lot, like our military families in the U.S. move every 2 to 4 years, and the child is displaced from school. Those are some of the typical family traumas, or losing your home during the mortgage crisis. And then the last one, number 10, would be if your parent had a mental health illness. And my generation, we didn't really see our parents go off to counselors. So you have to kind of guess if that was going on. So the 2 most disruptive to a child is borderline personality disorder, which is fast trigger anger. You don't know what kind of mood they're going to be in. When they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're horrid. That's the best way to explain borderline. They get moody and upset over the littlest things. And then bipolar is manic depressive. Depression can come out as anger or checking out emotionally. Manic could be a phase of gambling or spending spree, eating, binge eating, something like that could be a manic phase. So those are the 10 traumas that kids commonly grow up with, some of them. And the research shows that about 80% of people say they have like 1 to 3 of these events that have happened in their life. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like thinking through my family and close friends or people that I have good relationships with. I know someone who's had at least one of every one of those.
Yep.
So,
So it's more common than we
yeah.
realize. And then what happens is this plays out
Yeah.
in later years in your love relationships.
So that sort of leads me into your origin story, which we talk about is like, how did you go from being a professional in this space to being an entrepreneur in this space, where you are a life coach and an author and those kind of things? How did you make that transition, and why did you make that transition?
Sure. Well, and I opened my therapy practice, Therapy by the Sea, in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey, in year 2000, which is right outside of Atlantic City. And although I had a solo therapy practice, I also went and worked part time at the schools and the hospital center for adolescents, and the drug and alcohol rehab for adolescents and women from prison. So I had all these other jobs going on as I was doing the psychotherapy work. And unfortunately, as a therapist, like very many of our other medical professions, we are held hostage by the insurance companies. After 17 years of not getting more than a $5 per session raise by the insurance companies, I quit them and went out on my own. Got certified as a coach 2009 and 10. And I said, I definitely want to be a coach, but I wanted to put out really important materials, educational materials. I'm really all about education. So I wrote my first book, Live Beyond Your Dreams, From Fear and Doubt to Personal Power, Purpose, and Success. And its sister book, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve. And then went on and built a 150-page notebook, interactive notebook for singles, and then one for couples. So to produce all that education materials took me a while, but I was still coaching since 2010, but also doing therapy. And then once all my materials were done, I built an online school, which is called the My Life and Love Training Academy.com, where I can have people do online self-study as well as work with me as a coach. So once these programs were formed and developed, I left the therapy business completely. Fall of 2017. The winds of change with Hurricane Irma said, now it's time to close my office. And I went full time with coaching, and I love it. I absolutely love it. In that process, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say for not a lot of people have, so there tends to be two types of entrepreneurs. Those of us who are born into it and we never had a job and we sucked at jobs and we could never really do it. And those of us who make the transition from doing the work to being an entrepreneur. And you obviously made that transition. How do you feel about that? And like, do you have any advice you might give someone who's making that or thinking about making that kind of transition?
Yes, I've been an entrepreneur since my 20s. This is just part 2 of my life. I opened a model and talent school at age 26 up in Erie, PA. And I opened with my first month's rent after I left a marriage where my husband borrowed a large sum of money from my mother. And after I lost respect over that, the business that we had, which was a chocolate company, he signed some papers behind my back and got us into $750,000 in debt. So I was 26 years old with 2 little daughters, and decided to leave the marriage. I said, I cannot tolerate anymore. So we bankrupt, and I opened up this model and talent school and agency. I modeled for 13 years at that time. It's like, I can be an agent. I'll figure out what to do. And I was always motivated by success and learning. So I opened up the school. Within 6 months, it became an International Model and Talent School of the Year award winner for educational excellence. And soon after, I was able to buy a nice home for my daughters and I had it for 10 years. And I was doing a lot of coaching and counseling, helping people with eating disorders that came to me thinking they had to be skinny to model. It's like, no, you don't look good. You need to be healthy to model. You need healthy hair and teeth and skin. And so I was doing a lot of counseling at that time, and I loved it. And it's like, I really want to go back to school to get a master's degree. My first degree was in Penn State for communications, broadcast communications. So my first job out of Penn State was to work as a copywriter for CBS station, which I really loved it, but the pay was low. And I said, I can make more on my own. So I always start my business with a dream. None of my businesses have started with a bank loan. None. And I got this gift from one of my mentors, Gene Vassell, who was head of sales at the radio station WFIL out of Philadelphia. And I was a model called a boss chick. And we had hot pants and go-go boots, and we worked all over the city of Philadelphia on incredible things. Like I danced the encore with Freddie Mercury at the Night of the Opera concert, and had to pick up Alice Cooper from the airport, and worked with all kinds of celebrities. That was my job, and making 25 an hour. Not bad for a teenage kid back in that day.
Yeah.
And I love the entertainment field, and getting to the bottom of how did they get famous and what did they do and what was their mindset, when everybody else wanted to be a singer, how did they reach the top? So I was always interested in reading biographies as a kid and, getting to know these people and how did they reach their goals. So I always had this entrepreneur spirit.
Yeah, so you've sort of flirted back and forth with that line with entrepreneurship and doing work for other people and everything. That's really cool.
Well, you have to do what you got to do, right? So I was building my business, but I needed a regular income. I was supporting my children. I was also paying child support for joint custody, and I had to pay my mother back $200,000 that my husband frauded from her. So that you can't really do on a simple 9-to-5 job, nor can you do it as a beginning entrepreneur. Yeah. So, yeah, had developed the mindset for success very early on.
So, my next question then is, what would you say after all of your years as an entrepreneur that your superpower is? Like that, if you could nail it down and say, here's the thing that I do that's either led to my success or really helps me help other people, what would you say your superpower is?
It's teaching the mindset for success in all life areas. No matter what difficult transition you go through, and I've been tested on this my whole life, that you can overcome. And I'm also very faith-based and very spiritual. So with faith and the mindset for success, you can complete and do anything that you dream to do. And this is what I teach my clients when they come to me out of a toxic relationship or through a difficult life situation like a divorce or something like that, or they move to a new city and they can't get their head wrapped around all the stress that they're feeling. They call me and we do life and love transformation coaching to get them where it is they need to be. But a big part of it is all mindset.
So if you could distill it down, couple of things, like 30 seconds, what would you say some of the most important mindsets are to overcoming and doing the things that you want to do?
Fear-based thinking is the top killer. Research shows 8 out of 10 of most people's thoughts are negative based, and these all come from our childhood trauma messages. So overcoming the fearful mindset, overcoming anxiety, overcoming bouts of depression, self-doubt.
Is that the kind of fear, it's like that negative voice in your head that says, I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or it won't. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, correct. Yes, that all come from the childhood trauma messages.
That's really interesting. So, like when you were going through the childhood trauma, I realized like I don't have most of them. Like maybe one was, in middle school I got teased a lot for being small, right?
Okay.
But I felt solace in the fact that I was smarter than all of them anyway. So, I was arrogant as a little child, and so like that's how I dealt with it. But a lot of those like negative, like that kind of fear thinking, my dad always really instilled in me that it was anything you put your mind to, you can do. Like there's nothing keeping you there. So I always had that other side, telling me that I could do whatever I wanted. So it's not something I struggled a lot with, but I know like everyone does. And I can see it and I can hear it. He's just a small voice, that I've always had a bigger voice on the other side, on that. So it's interesting that like you specifically focus on helping people overcome that negative voice.
And then come into full conscious awareness to live in positivity and the confidence that they can do what they dream to do. Yes.
So one of the things that I found interesting is, at least for myself, I've always the way I've always imagined that negative voice is that it's a separate voice, like it's not me, it's not coming from inside, and if it's separate, then I can ignore it, and that's just like a mental game that I've always played.
Okay.
Because it's not like I don't know if I'm saying that right, but like
That's one way
it
to
doesn't
do
come
it.
from inside me.
Yeah, that's
So
one way to do
how do you generally help people overcome those kind of things?
it. We use a process called capping. You correct the negative thought. A gentle parent voice inside of you, which is your own voice, you're reparenting yourself to say, no, that's not true. You know, everything is going fine. I've got you, God's got you, you know, or whatever power you believe in, whichever higher power. My healing definitely is based on faith-based healing. So whether to call it the
Absolutely.
divine, God, you know, whatever, it's really important because that's part of the gentle faith of, you know, you were born perfectly imperfect. You know, we're all here to learn lessons in life. That's a Buddha message, you know, that we're supposed to make mistakes and we're supposed to learn from those mistakes. So they're not really mistakes. It's just part of the journey. So it's a gentle reparenting if you have a fear-based thought and you cap it with a positive one.
Yeah, so I mean that's exactly one of the things that we do with our kids, right? So it's interesting to think about that in terms of like of your own thinking of how do you
Yeah.
replace and correct the thinking.
And
Um,
I raised my daughters totally different. My girls are now 35 and 36, but my 36-year-old Alexi Panos coaches around the world now. She's been putting water wells in Africa since the age of 20, building 14 of them. She sings on 3 multi-platinum CDs. She models. She's in top magazines, Runway, HGTV, a couple seasons for several shows on home makeovers. So this is a girl that has heard my messages, both my daughters, since they were growing up. He was living that to the max, you know, the watch me mindset for success is what I call it. When anyone
yeah,
doubts you or puts you down or says your dream is stupid, in your own head, you say, watch me, I can do it. You know,
that
so
is exactly the thinking that I was raised with as well, and I love it.
right.
It's actually almost the same response I have all the time when someone tells me I can't do something.
Yeah.
It's watch me do it instead. And it's interesting because like when you have that kind of attitude, you do things that sometimes a lot of people think are impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in my own industry, I've made a number of invention is a strong word, but like solved problems that people didn't think could be solved. Um, and you know, it's from that watch me attitude, and my brother and I both share it. And I remember like growing up, like if you ask either of us nowadays, like he works in like aerospace design type stuff, and he
Awesome.
works with CNC machines and other things. He does stuff that's like way over my head. But either way, it's like both of us, you know, in our respective industries. Someone's like, you know, they always ask, "Can you do this?" And we always respond with, "That's the wrong question."
Mm-hmm.
Because that question is always yes.
Yeah,
The appropriate question is how much time and money and energy do you want into getting that result?
that's great. Yeah.
Because yeah, because we could always find a way to make it happen.
And my daughters have always been entrepreneurs as well. So they've all created their own businesses. When they were young, I used to ask them, Mom needs a logo for this, or I need, for a fashion show, I need a certain song that brings about this and that. And we'll brainstorm ideas. And, you know, that was something I did since they were very young. So for them to put a marketing plan together or come up with a logo or a slogan, it's like second nature to them. So do teach your
Yeah, yeah.
children while they're young
My
business.
where is it? He's sitting there. That's my son, and he is currently doing his schoolwork here. But he has a couple of businesses that he's started. He's got one where he's working on creating pine cones, like collecting pine cones and putting like color stuff on them. So when you burn them, they burn different colors, and working on
Oh,
selling those.
nice. Cool.
Yeah, and he built a bunch of I don't know. He turned hairpins and popsicle sticks into crossbows with rubber bands and whatnot. He was selling those at the little farmers market. So, anyways, we've been encouraging that kind of stuff for a while. I really
Good.
look forward to seeing what comes because, like, I didn't really get into the entrepreneur stuff till I was much older. So, just I think it'd be interesting to see how much further he gets because of the earlier he got to start, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
So, so generally, we talk a little bit about common enemies, but it sounds like we already covered that a little bit with the fear-based mindset. So I want to talk a little bit about the driving force, right? So in our whole hero mantra things, Spider-Man fights to save New York, Batman fights to save Gotham, or, Google fights to index all the world's information. What is it that you fight for? What is it that you're looking to help people really achieve?
Hmm. I say I'm on a mad mission to change the way the world loves, to go from unconscious hookup culture to emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious love relationships. So I am an educator. I do a lot of research coming from, the psychotherapy background of a triple master's in that. So taking any of the research from that and helping them with the exact skills they need to attract and have an emotionally healthy relationship, because those skills weren't taught anywhere, not by our parents, not in schools.
You have your work cut out for you, the mission like that too, because our culture is like hardcore into the hookup, and I
It's
know
really
like
sad.
even the
Yeah.
number of people who are getting married is dropping, and I know that
Yeah, and the
the divorce
millennials.
statistic is totally, yeah, the divorce statistic is totally bogus because they don't actually account for a number of things, but the real statistic is like
It's
most
about
marriages actually survive most of
60%.
the time. Yeah, but um, the the real statistic, the one that's actually scary, is most people are just not getting married, right? So it's not that marriages aren't surviving; they're just not even starting to begin with.
Well, they grew up watching their parents' marriages fall apart. It's funny, I was
Yeah,
on a lecture with Dr. Terry Real, who coaches a lot of men who have toxic personality types. And he was saying amongst the millennia, the baby boomers, which is where I am, I fit in the baby boomer crowd. He says the women really, really evolved throughout time, but the men stayed stuck, wanting to be in that Ozzie and Harriet, the woman does everything. She cooks, she cleans, now she works. She does the kids, she does everything. He does the 9 to 5, comes home, sits down, wants his meal on the table still, and then goes and watches TV for the night. Well, women, my generation, we're leaving that in hordes. It's like, to me, it's just another child. We can raise our children without the third child. And he's there, I'm a feminist. He goes, I've watched these women through the generation say, okay, well, we grew up watching that we're supposed to be housewives and we're going to be taken care of. Then, when I was 21, I went to college. It's like, oh, okay, I guess we're getting a job, and then having the kids and trying to get the kids the jobs, the grocery shopping, the meals, cleaning the house. We were doing so much. It was so much overload that, the pressure from the male, that if he was irresponsible or hanging out with his buddies or going down to the corner bar, eventually says, I'll just do this on my own. So this is what his report was, that the men have not really evolved. However, the kids growing up watching this, the millennial men, where my daughters and son-in-laws fall into, the men are very much taking care of the kids and the house and helping out every way as an equal partner in those areas. And the women are still working, but they have a little bit now of support. They have the support and help now from these men that want to be good fathers, because they saw their fathers just like check out. They weren't spending much time with them. So he says that has been the biggest change in society and relationships, where the millennial men have really stepped up and balanced these relationships so much better.
yeah. It's really like there's so many things in that that we could unpack and dive into, but like everything from the women working to like it almost gets ostracized nowadays when women want to stay home and be moms,
Yeah, I
and
know.
or if they want to take a couple of years off and go home and be moms, which is unfortunate.
It is for the
Because
kids that are coming up.
yeah,
Yeah.
because there's nothing like a mom, right? And anyways, yeah. So like my mom worked all growing up, but my dad was also he did a really good job of doing all the he did a lot of stuff with us
Yeah.
growing up. But I can see that, like, and my wife and I have the whole equal partner thing going on, but I do work so she can raise our children, which is what she
Oh,
wants to
that's
do.
good. Yeah.
We have
Yeah,
we
that's a
have 4
gift
kids.
today.
Yeah,
It is
we have
rare.
4 kids, and I make enough with the business that she doesn't have to work, so she doesn't, and we travel full time, right? So we have a lot of fun doing that, but that's not a typical situation. It's
Right.
something that we worked really hard to create. And earlier in our marriage, she did work, but anyways, we got it to a point where she didn't have to, so she could stay home with the kids.
Yeah. So
So
a lot of the marriages are also falling apart because of this unhealed, unconscious childhood trauma wounds.
yeah,
People are, there's a lot of narcissism going on. There's control, anger, jealousy. And this is all people pleasing from the women, trying to please everybody and then burning out and getting angry and resentful because they're exhausted. Men wanting to control a high, powerful businesswoman who's out earning a lot of money, and then he's nitpicking her to death with what she's wearing, or her weight isn't perfect. It's all these unhealed wounds that people are coming from, and it's causing
yeah. And
a lot of
so,
sabotage in relationships.
do you think the massive drop in birth rates we've seen globally is a part of that as well? Where, like, I know they were talking in the U.S., if you remove the Hispanic culture, our birth rate in the U.S. is like 1.8, which is barely enough to survive.
Yeah.
Hispanic culture, it's like 2.5, but like Japan and France have both had to hire ministers of sex, so to speak, because they're trying to encourage people to have families. And like, I'm curious if you think that might play in some of the childhood trauma.
Yeah, I mean, because again, the kids grow up seeing their moms or single moms struggling to support the families, working like I did. I worked 4 to 5 jobs, for a period of time too. But then I had the other unfortunate situation that, my family was ripped off by my husband. So it's like, okay, do I really need that? Or can I just make it on my own with my kids? I can do better with that versus, the man bringing me down in some way. So yeah, as women who are successful in business, we expect a successful, emotionally healthy and conscious male, so it's just the lack of responsibility in a lot of people, not overcoming their own traumas. He was someone that had childhood traumas, a lot of self-doubt. And that whole situation happened because he was trying to please his father. So I mean, the forgiveness piece was huge for me, for my healing. And I had to, once I uncovered the childhood trauma, it's like, oh, okay, great. Well, now I totally understand what he grew up with, and I can forgive that because he was not nurtured the way he should have been. But it runs havoc, and people aren't understanding that this is going on. And there's a lot of unhealed people running around and hurting others due to,
So I'm curious on this mission you're on to help heal these relationships, and what did you call it? You're on a mad mission to heal the way we love and build relationships, or the way the world loves. How has it been going with your school and your courses and whatnot? Have you started to see a lot of
I'm doing great. I'm doing really great.
On like how you're doing, but like with your students, are you starting to see people get like results and they sort of things out? Like, what kind of success for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at 100% success. Anyone that finishes my courses, and my finish rate is extremely high. I only think maybe 5% don't finish, and I heard a statistic only 9% don't finish most courses. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, my people finish. They want to finish. So I've only done, a couple of years of full-time coaching. I am in the 5% of people making 6 figures in coaching. I am global. I went from a local office, 2 years ago to global. I have my online school. I have 7 different programs. I had the live radio show, the podcast show. I'm on Alexa. I am out there. And it's, I have the energy and the mission to do it.
So when your students are finishing the courses, you're starting to see people like actually change their lives as a result of that kind of stuff?
Totally change their lives. Yeah. If you go to my podcast, it's on my YouTube channel or lessonsinlifeandlove.com. I just had 2 of my graduates on. One just got married, and one's on there. She goes, my life has totally changed. I mean, I have 80 testimonials on my website, rianamilne.com. that people can read through. It totally changes their life in many different areas. And once they really get the mindset for success and going from unconscious reaction or poor coping strategies from their childhood wounds and become consciously aware of everything they're doing, saying, acting, have this new purpose-driven life, goal setting techniques, everything that they learn in the program, their whole lives totally change. It's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one of the things that I talk about all the time with my kids about this more than anyone else, really, but the idea that between stimulus and response, there is choice, right? And
Mm-hmm.
most people, that choice is automatic, right? They're having stimulus come in and just making choices. That's the reaction mindset that you're having.
Yeah,
And
that's the unconscious mind that gets them in trouble.
yeah, one of our goals as a coach or an educator is to teach people how to separate stimulus from response so we can have control over that choice. And
Mm-hmm.
once you master the choices you want to be making, then you start to bring those back together and you start automatically making the choices, the better results. And that's how you become a master at anything, really. But that's really, it's what you're helping people do, is like unpack that stimulus response, take out the bad decision making and put in better decision making.
Or not bad decision making, but decision making that unconsciously has been driving them most of their lives because of the childhood conditioning. It all really goes back to that, you know. That's what's so fascinating about that.
How important, my fear as a parent is that I'm doing something that I'm going to royally mess up their their decision making as an adult, which is probably every parent's fear. But because it's true, right? Whatever you give them, right? They come to you as a blank slate, and you give them all the things that all the skills and the coping skills and the decision making skills that they're going to use the rest of their lives.
I love being a counselor in the schools, because the kids that were not getting guidance, love, or nurturing at home were the ones acting out in the schools, right? They were the bullies. They were the ones acting up in their classroom. So I got a chance to reparent them as a counselor. And I taught them the mindset for success, and their friends went up and their grades went up. Their anxiety went down. A lot of them didn't need their ADHD meds anymore. So all my students were meditating in my office, which was called Miss Riana's relaxation room. I taught them how to meditate and calm down the brain processes. So and I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been working with people of trauma for 20 years. That's all that I have been getting as a counselor. And it was really time to bring out the checklist and really, uncover this.
I have an interesting question for you, because not a lot of people have this experience. What is the difference between teaching a child to do something and teaching an adult to do something? Because you're teaching the same set of skills, whether or not you're teaching them to a child in, Miss Riana's relaxation room, or teaching them to adults who are going through your program. How have you found that educational experience as the teacher different?
I don't really find it much different at all. I really look at young people as being brilliant. I don't treat them as little kids. I treat them as, equals. I think they're brilliant. They want to learn, and they know they have pain in their life. They know they can't make friends. They know that their grades should be better. They know they're unhappy at home. Same with the adults. When the adults come to me, they come because there's some kind of pain going on. They've been in a toxic marriage for 20 years. They have to get out. They're so overwhelmed with their pain and their anxiety and bouts of depression. So really, it's very equal, and a child knows when they're in pain, just like an adult knows that they're in pain and not happy. So when they get to that point as I want to change my life, I want to learn what to do to make this pain go away. It's just teaching them. And it's still, like I said, for the adult, it's reparenting. So I can teach the same type of meditation, and I do, to my elementary school kids that I teach to my adults. In communication skills for my couples, I teach my students the art of negotiation. They can barely say the words, but they know how to negotiate through a problem, where before they would fight their way through it. So it's fascinating teaching at all levels.
Said that too. Because I love that you said that, because it's one of the things that I catch a lot of flack from as a parent, from other parents who don't understand my mindset. And like all the way down to like I've always treated my kids as if they are on my level.
Yeah.
From like an intellectual standpoint. And I remember like specifically son who you just met a few minutes ago. He was 18 months, walking, barely talking, that kind of thing. And we were out in the backyard throwing a ball with each other. And as we're throwing the ball, I'm just explaining the physics of throwing the ball to him, right?
Okay.
I'm telling him about parabolic arches and like just all the mathematics, right? Because it's something I find fascinating. And, I'm throwing a ball with an 18-month-old, right? So keeping my own mind engaged. And my stepdad comes out and he's like, "Why are you doing that? Like, he can't understand any of those things that you're saying." And I was like, who am I to judge what he can or can't understand? And I remember we come back a couple of weeks later, and we had a bit earlier, we'd been throwing the ball up onto the porch, and he couldn't quite get it up onto the porch. And I explained to him, and I was like, step back a little bit, you'll have a shallower, arch, and you'll be able to throw it with your strength, with your arm. He's 18 months old, right? So like he couldn't even say the word parabolic arch, let alone like what he could understand. But we come back a couple of weeks later, and we go out to the backyard, and he takes the ball, and he immediately steps back, and he throws the ball up onto the patio, and he goes, "Parabolic arch, Dad, parabolic arch."
Wow, that's awesome.
And like from that point on, it was like I was sold. I was like, my son is capable. Like, I can't judge what he can or can't understand, so I've always just given him everything and let his mind soak it in. Right,
there's a great body of research, Richard. It's called the Dome. Well, when I studied it, I was pregnant, so it's 36 years ago. The Doman Method of Education, which is outside of Philadelphia, very close to where I lived. It was called the Better Baby Institute. Now I think it's called the Institute for Human Potential, and you can find it online. And I was reading their books, and I said, I believe in this. I'm going to teach my kids to read. My kids were reading books by the time they were 2. I took them into kindergarten. I said, "What are you teaching them?" "Well, we start with this is letter A and this is letter B." I said, "Honey, go get a book on the bookshelf to read to the teacher." She picks up a book. She starts reading it. They're like, "Oh my God." I said, "My kids have been reading for years." Yeah. And, but they couldn't go into school because of the age rule. Like you have to enter in. But Alexi exempted 11th grade. She went from 10th to 12th grade. They both graduated top 5% of their class. They mostly had A's all throughout. They had the love of learning because I made learning a game. And I said, I have 3 grandsons now. So I said, just do the same things with your boys. Talk to them like they understand you when they're babies, and they'll talk sooner. And when they do start talking, they're going to really understand a lot more, And I watch them progress, and it's fascinating. I love it, that they're teaching the same thing and how they learn.
All 4 of them were potty trained by 18 months. And, my current 2-year-old is talking up a storm and reading, and she's counting to 10 in sign language and in English.
Awesome.
And, that kind of stuff. It is crazy, like how quickly they learn when you.
Yeah, their brains are sponges from 0 to 5. So any parents that's missing out on that learning curve and making learning fun in the game is really, really missing out on giving their child the edge for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's a good point too, because one of the things that I've always sort of believed, and I think more parents should particularly take advantage of, is my goal as a parent is to give my child more resources than I had, and I had a lot. Like my dad worked his ass off to give me a big step up, and that's how we progress as a society, is by sending our children forth with more than we have.
We want our children. Yeah. My daughter hit over $1 million last year as a 36-year-old global coach. It's like, yeah, so you teach the mindset for success early on. I remember she was sitting there watching the TV commercial for Save the Children. You had the little children in Africa. They're starving. She goes, "Mom, I'm going to go to Africa and take care of those kids one day." And I said, "You know what? I totally believe you will." And by 20, she goes, "I want to put water wells in Africa." It's like, okay, this has been a dream of yours for a long time. Figure out. And she did it on her own. I didn't do it for her. She and her best friend.
Have you considered putting together a program for parents? Like, so you're teaching these mindsets, but like how they can then put those into and teach their kids those mindsets?
I haven't built it yet, and I know I should. It's on the to-do list, Richard. Yeah.
I will buy it.
I should do it. Thank you. Because I've taught a lot of parental education and teacher education in the schools as well as a SAC counselor.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about that. So that would be like a tool in your tool belt, right? It's knowing how to pass those mindsets, that thinking onto someone else. we talk on the show about your heroes tool about things like, Thor has his magical hammer, or maybe you just really love the way Evernote help you organize your thoughts. What are some of the tools that you use on a daily basis to do what you do in your business, right? To do what you do to help coach people. And
well, my Live and Love books are part of my curriculum, and my 150-page notebook, everybody says they're gold. That's where the gold is. These were worksheets I put together. And some are from where I got my training, RCI, Relationship Coaching Institute. However, many I developed on my own around the research on trauma and how it impacts adults in their life. So my clients fill them out and they get them back to me. And it's kind of like bibliotherapy or journaling therapy. As they write, this is how I interpret it as a clinical trauma professional. Now, like I'll have somebody write all about their dad. And then I said, but you realize in that 2-page story, you didn't say one thing about your mom. I said, so she was pretty absent in your life, huh? And the mom, the father was really a monster, and the mom checked out because she was afraid to stand up to the husband. So I see things like that through the writing, and then we go through the worksheets. And with that helps me to coach them, and it's very individualized based on the workbooks. But then I have the online school.
Are really where the tools come in.
Yeah. But then I have the online school, which is a self-study program. And, has PowerPoints, audios, videos, and worksheets in there for anyone that wants to sign up at that level, which is called our mastery level. It's the introductory level.
Interesting. Yeah. And I love how often writing comes up for entrepreneurs as a tool to get things done, right? As a way to think and see what's going on. Do you think there's any sort of why do you think that is? Why do you think writing is such a powerful tool for, in your case, for helping people?
Well, it's getting your ideas out in a concrete way. And also that then we have a goal setting system that we put in place. Once their ideas are out, where are they going to go? Do you need 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month? What's the best order to do these? Then we do what we call outside of the box thinking, which my boss from the radio station said, "Hun, you always got to come up with something that makes you different from everybody else." So when I'm brainstorming with people, part of life coaching in my company is also helping people get businesses off the ground. So it's like, what is your niche? What's going to make you special? What's going to make you different from every other life coach out there? I am the only life and love coach that's also a certified clinical trauma professional and the psychotherapist. So I put all these hats on to help my people first heal, have self-love, and then go on to create their dream. So if part of their dream is getting out of the job they hate, then part of my job is to brainstorm with them to help them create that life, that career that they would really love.
So it's something you just reminded me of that I want to bring up real quick. I know probably not a lot of our audience is terribly religious, but one of the, you mentioned self-love as being a tool. And I know scripturally speaking, one of the things that when I think it's Peter asks Christ, he says, what are the greatest commandments? And he says something of, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself.
You love yourself.
And there's an assumption that you love yourself. And it's interesting how many people don't have that own assumption in their life, that they don't start with that. They don't start with I love myself, and then they can't love their neighbors, like you're talking about, have the relationships of your dream, because they don't have that assumption that Christ has, that you're going to love yourself because you have that spark of divinity, that you have the worthiness of being loved.
Yeah, I really like Ernest Holmes and the Science of Mind philosophy. That's what I study now. Plus, I like the Course of Miracles. But all the higher books are saying the same thing. You must have self-love, despite what your circumstances that you came from. You have to have the self-love before you can love another. So some people come in with such low self-esteem and guilt-ridden and not happy and really down on themselves. And we have to start there. Unfortunately, in our culture, somebody breaks up the next day, they go online and go back out there to date, right? It's like, no, that's the wrong thing to do. You have to stop, regroup, get yourself back first, spend some time in making you feel terrific again, right?
And then in terms of like we've been talking a lot about entrepreneurship and things like that and business and being a coach and doing those things. Like if you don't have that foundation, like you're not going to be able to go out and actually have a mission and have a driving force that's helping other people. That's going to have an impact beyond yourself, right? So if you don't have yourself taken care of, not only will you not be able to love your neighbors, you won't be able to build a business that really succeeds and thrives.
Yes. Like that mindset for survival, for success that I had at 25 years old that made me leave that toxic marriage and go for a model and talent school, open it up just because I believed I could do it. That and prayer. And I couldn't get a loan because I just had a $750,000 bankruptcy at 26 years old and 2 little kids to take care of. What made me survive that and still feel I can do this? And I just, again, getting the mindset focused, setting up your daily goals, your weekly goals, your monthly goals, your 6-month goals, your 1-year goal, and proceeding each day towards those goals and believing that you can. Faith is everything, and faith is not religion. Faith is that belief that your God-given self, this higher person within you can accomplish what it is, your dreams, your goals. And eventually that should be serving your purpose in life. We're all here for a reason. What is that? Richard, I'm also Reverend Riana. A lot of people don't know that. I mean, I've been doing marriage ceremonies since 1997. It's one of my other businesses I created, and I love it. But yes, I mean, that spiritual faith, no matter what you want to call it, whether it's Judaism or Christian or Muslim, there's a higher order, a higher faith belief system. And you've got to find it because that is what's healing. It makes you feel your best. It gives you that confidence that you are here for a reason. And it helps you make your mission and purpose in life crystal clear. So gets you through the tough times.
Common, by the way. I've also performed a number of marriages. I went to a Bible college and actually have a degree in preaching.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a thing I do. But anyways,
the Hero Show will be right back. Are you tired of trying to write webinars that don't consistently convert? How would you like to have a webinar that effortlessly created sales in your online business? You can. Introducing the Webinar Alchemy Workshop. Webinar Alchemy Workshop is an online masterclass that will help you write incredibly persuasive webinars for your online courses quickly and easily. Using what you learn in this class, you can build a webinar that educates your entire audience while still creating sales. For a limited time, you can purchase this masterclass for only $7, and you'll get the exact framework I've personally used to help my clients sell more than $1 million worth of online coaching and training just over the last year. Simply text the word alchemy, ALCHEMY, to 444999, and I'll send you all the details.
The music is by Purple Planet Music. Visit www.purple-planet.com.
And now, back to the show.
I'm going to push forward just a little bit on this and talk about your own personal heroes, right? So Frodo had Gandalf, Luke had Obi-Wan, Robert Kiyosaki had his Rich Dad. Who are some of your heroes? Were they real life mentors? Were they authors, speakers, people who are just a few years ahead of you? And how important were they to, what you've accomplished so far?
Well, for business, like I said, the sales manager at the radio station in Philadelphia taught me a whole lot about marketing, PR, promotion, working with the general public. He was phenomenal. But I was always a reader. As a young kid, I remember in 2nd grade, I won an award for reading the most books in the year. It was 99. I said, nope, it was 100. That was my goal, but she only recorded 99. But they were almost all biographies. So I was always learning, love to learn. So I started there, and then at 16, unfortunately, my best friend was killed by a drunk driver, and it really made me question how much life do I have left? When is it going to be my turn? And I have to make a difference in life now for me and for Michael. And then my Penn State roommate of 3 years, unfortunately, was murdered by her boyfriend, who in a domestic violence incident. And she was 23, I was 24. And again, it was a wake-up call. How much time do I have left? And And this was part of my mission. I became a drug and alcohol counselor to give back in Michael's name. And I was an advocate for people of domestic violence, men, women, and children, because of Corinne's situation. So, these real life situations made me think and be different. In my 20s, I really liked Marianne Williamson in The Course of Miracles. Tony Robbins, I always loved his work. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Ernest Holmes, I'm reading right now this thing called You, about, your spiritual divine self. So always reading. My coaches that I've had, my business coach was Lisa Sachovich. I signed up at the highest level, the diamond level, and worked with her for a year. And John Lee Dumas was my podcast coach, and he's phenomenal. And I'm still working with him. And Dean Graciasi right now is a program out with Tony Robbins, and I'm learning a lot from Dean. I think he's terrific. And I also am learning a lot from my daughter, Alexi Panos, who is speaking all over the world. She's been coaching for 8 years now, I think. And she's been doing it full time more than I have. I was the traditional psychotherapist. So, what's really working for her, I always go to her for advice. And isn't that cool? The parent can go to the child, with high respect and say, I need to learn this, help me, which is really great, So I'm always opening to learning new skills and new techniques that will help me to reach my client in a better way, or teach them in a better way.
Absolutely. And I love that you've gotten to a point with your children that you're actually learning from them.
Yeah.
And I was just telling my best friend, a business partner, the other day that I'm pretty excited. My oldest has gotten to the point where we can do things together, where I don't have to do the parenting. Right. So it's things like we can go kayaking together, and like the two of us can go and we can kayak together, and I'm not teaching him and I'm not parenting him as we kayak, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You're just hanging out as buddies.
They're just hanging out as buddies.
Yeah, that's great.
All my other kids are younger. So everything we do is parenting, really.
Yes, it is.
It's a cool place to be, where it's like we can do something together that we're just buddies. And I think it's really cool when you get to a point where you have that kind of relationship where you can go to your child and actually learn from them. And
yeah, I love my kids' company. They're bright, they're intelligent, they're also learners, readers, always challenging themselves and feeling confident about those challenges. It's really nice to have them as your adult friends.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of my favorite parts of growing up was that transition from being my parents' child to being a peer, if that makes sense. And that transition in the relationship was one of my favorite parts of growing up.
Yeah.
And I've got great relationships with my parents now because of it. Anyways, I look forward to doing that again as my children grow up. So on the other side.
Every stage with your kids is really amazing. Wait till you become a grandparent. It's like, oh my God. Then you see these little babies growing up that you help make, they're your kids too. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
My is in being so
we call it the circle of life, when you have a grandchild come.
She's like, I loved you a lot and it was fun, but being a grandparent is way better.
I can't say, it's hard because they don't live where I live now. So I have to, go and visit. But it just, luckily today we have the FaceTime, we have the Alexas that you can see them like almost in real life. It's really close, where my mom didn't have that with my children when they were growing up. So the technology is really helpful.
Yeah. So let's bring it home for our listeners a little bit and talk about your guiding principles. What are the top 1 or 2 things that you do on a daily basis that contribute to your success and the influence that you enjoy today? Ones that maybe you wish you knew when you got started.
Just recapping. I mean, really, since my 20s, I've been constant learning and reading. One of my favorite days off is going to the beach with a great book. Goal setting for success, that's been happening since my 20s. And that's why I've been reaching a lot of my entrepreneurial goals. Everything I set my mind to, I'm able to do. I like to create new programs and new challenges, think outside of the box, what's different, to grow my business and to bring cutting edge programs to my clients. And I'm always thinking what makes me different as the entrepreneur. Like I said, there's tons of life people out there calling themselves life coaching or love coaches. So what makes my programs different? And they're very, very different. And, that's nice because then you get known as the expert. I'm known as life, love, transformation expert, especially around anything trauma related. So those principles.
I think that's probably one of the most important things you've said in the whole conversation we've had today is learning how to communicate, like what your difference is and how to communicate it. Or universally applicable to all entrepreneurs, whether or not you're creating a product that you're selling on Amazon or getting in retail stores, to doing life coaching, to building programs, whatever it is you're doing, you have to be able to identify your difference and then communicate that difference to an audience if you're going to sell anything.
Right.
Do you have any tips for learning how to find your difference, whether it's, for a product or a coach or whatever it is that you're doing, and how you can communicate that?
I call it outside of the box thinking. Now, keep in mind, I've been doing this since a teenager, so it comes so natural for me. But you have to research your topic. If you're a love coach, what are the love coaches doing? And then you got to say, what are they not doing? And where's my area of expertise? Now, it's also really important as a coach, you have what we call a hero's journey. In other words, you've gone through this problem, this pain, and you're on the other side of it. And this is what then becomes I have a quote, my own quote, your pain becomes your purpose and your passion and your purpose, right? Your pain becomes your purpose and your passion. So if you can turn that around, and I needed to research. I mean, I had 8 psychotherapy friends that I had to go to, and it's like, why is my husband acting like this? And they're like, we have no idea. I said, well, I'm going to figure it out. And that's what started my journey to uncovering childhood trauma, because I needed those answers for my own healing. And I'm like, this is fascinating. Nobody's talking about this. I didn't learn this in my triple masters. This has to get out there. And that's how I said, and nobody else is doing it. So that's how I became the trauma professional that I am.
One of the ways that I teach that idea to my clients, is we do a lot of instructional design and stuff with my clients, is this idea that you have your client, right? The person that you're speaking to is someone who's on some sort of a journey themselves, right? They're on their own hero's journey, looking to accomplish something, and they're on one side of what I call the crocodile and river, right? And the crocodile and river is the problem they're looking to accomplish, to get across the transformation they want to make. And that river, it's infested with crocodiles, and it's got, whirlpools in it, and, it's got other things that are going to, slow them down or have problems with. And they want to get to the other side of the river, which is the promised land. And they want to live life on the other side in the promised land. And so when you come along with your coaching or your program or your product, that is like bringing them a boat, right? And they can get in the boat and they can go across the river, and your boat's cool, right? It's got it's a crocodile disintegrating lasers and GPS and all that kind of stuff. Those are like the features of your program. But the thing that sets your boat apart from all the other boats that are options for them, you as the captain, right? And that is, you have perspective that no one else has, right? Because you've been on this journey before. You have avoided the crocodile successfully, or you've helped other people do that. And learning how to nail down that the importance of for you and for your programs is you, right? It's that uniqueness that you were talking about, and how can you learn to communicate that uniqueness to your audience so that they'll get in the boat with you and you can help them make that transformation.
It's being authentic to really understanding their problem. Like if someone else tried to do what I'm doing and they haven't been through my same journey, so they haven't worked 20 years with people in trauma and then put together this around love. Because it happened to me in love relationships, right? Trauma happened to me in love relationships. And, everybody thinks, well, I had a pretty normal childhood. But, once you investigate it, and I put all those different work experiences together, why were these teens running away from home? Why are these kids bullying everybody else in the school? What's going on? How can I help them, make a friend and be more friendly? And what is their pain that they're going through? So it's really a unique story for me. And when you feel that you're tapping into your own hero's journey, then you enjoy the journey. It's yes, you want to get to the other side, but you also enjoy all the learning in between and what we call becoming evolved, which is being your highest and your best self. right? So when you're living this purpose, mission driven life and you're helping other humans and they feel your energy and your understanding and your empathy towards their pain, they open their heart and their mind to you. So they trust you. And then because they know you've been through the same thing. And then when they're learning and they're changing, when they're done, they're so excited about their life and their transformation. They're teaching others. So I just had a podcast with one of my grads, Olya, who is a Russian immigrant, came here with enough money to own in her pocket to get here at 18 years old, came alone, and she was traumatically tortured in Russia. And then she had one bad relationship and another one, then a bad marriage for 10 years. And she called me crying after hearing me on a podcast, or a relationship summit, actually. And I was running around preparing my house for Hurricane Irma, but I'm like, look, I want to talk to you right now. The electric might go out any second. It might be a week before I call you back, but I want to talk to you right now. And she said, I just felt so loved and nurtured because you stopped and you cared and you understood what I was going through. And it's like, I want to work with her. So you have to really feel what you're doing is important to give to the world. And when you do, it's not about selling someone. It's about understanding and being the answer for their pain. That's what success in business is.
It's really connecting with that authentic, uniqueness that you have, right? Because no one else can do what you do.
Exactly.
And one of the reasons probably why your program is so successful is because you're helping people understand their uniqueness, right? And
yes.
Once they learn to understand and love themselves and move forward with that stuff, that no one else can do what they were put here to do, right? Because they have their story and their uniqueness, and then they can go out and make the same kind of impact with whatever it is that they've been given to do. Which is super powerful.
Like Olya went on to be a health coach, and she said, I need to have a business support me and my son. I said, let's do that in your coaching. This is part of life. I'll do that. So she transformed so much. I wanted her to be one of my coaches as well. And her business went up so much with all the ideas we put in place that she's too busy to be one of my coaches now. But she's another one of my testimonials about how this program really works. So she is now helping people that are struggling in health who have childhood trauma overcome that because she understands it, right? So this is how the mission gets spread. One person that I teach is teaching others. When they see someone in pain, they know what it is. It's amazing. It is like a small global effect. Yeah.
So that basically brings us to the end of our show. I got two more things I'm going to do with you. One of them I call the Hero Challenge. Hero Challenge is pretty simple. And I do this to all my guests. And basically it's, do you have someone in your network that you think has a really good story, an entrepreneurial story, that they should come and share on the podcast? And who are they, and why do you think they should come share their story?
Okay, well, probably Olya, who I just shared her story with, who came to this country at 18, couldn't speak the language, with nothing, no cash, except to get here. Went through hell in relationships to be on the other side as now this successful health coach who's happy, has an amazing relationship. She told me they just bought an front home together. I mean, she's living the American dream, and she loves her business. She's helping people have extreme health. So yeah, I can give her your name. She'd be thrilled to talk to you. So, and I have a lot of people that I'm thinking of, but that stands out in my mind because I just mentioned her.
Awesome. So last thing is, I know we've mentioned this a couple of times, where can people find you if they are looking to go through one of these programs? And more importantly, who is the kind of person that should reach out and go through your programs? Like if they're listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, should I reach out or not? Who is the person that should say, yes, I should reach out and come find you?
Okay, well, this is an interesting area. I work with men, women, straight and LGBTQ population from 16 to 76 or older. And the reason is childhood trauma has no prejudice. So anyone that knows that they're suffering as an adult today in life and love, or they're going off to college and they're feeling really panicked about that, or they're back home and graduated from college and they don't know where to get started to start their life and have a career, or a woman out of a 23 toxic year relationship, just got divorced, and it's like, oh my God, how do I start over? I haven't dated for 23 years. Or a man that was just ripped off by a sociopathic woman who he loved and is hurting, and needs to heal. And why is he attracted to people that keep hurting him over and over again? So I have many different people with many different stories, but it's unbelievable that the base root of the pain is childhood trauma. So the best thing is, if you're kind of recognizing yourself in those 10 traumas, reach out to me at my website. It's rianamilne.com. And there is a pop-up form to meet with me. It's at a very low rate, and it's a limited first-time special going on. And I give you several assessments, and we meet for an hour on Skype. And then I get to the bottom of the root of your issues that are keeping you stuck. There's also free chapter downloads of both Live and Love Beyond Your Dreams on that homepage, as well as free love tests. And the childhood trauma checklist is on there. So I want everyone to do that. And then if you want more information on the childhood trauma checklist and what I'm talking about, I have a free ebook, and it's at AKATheAlchemist.com. AKATheAlchemist.com. And of course, my podcast, Lessons in Life and Love, every Friday comes out. I have lessonsinlifeandlove.com. I have an app, Lessons in Life and Love on the go. It's free to download. So you've got articles, videos, audios. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm also on Alexa. So daily lessons in life and love. So just put my name in there. I'll pop up, Riana Milne.
Yeah, so it's for those of you who are thinking about it, it's www.riana.milne.com, and that's the right place to
yes.
reach out to you.
That's the best start.
Awesome, cool. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Riana. This has been a really fascinating conversation. I've never even discussed childhood trauma with anyone before, so it's super fascinating.
It's new. Yeah.
Especially how it affects entrepreneurs and affects what we're doing. And I just love how you connected it to your higher purpose, right? Being able to get to the things that you should be doing to help people. That's really what this show is all about, is about helping people, connect with their story and realize, and hopefully, through seeing someone like you, seeing your story, seeing how they could, do the same kind of thing in their lives. So anyways, it's been really fascinating. Glad you came on.
Thank you, Richard, for having me. And by doing that, you're helping to spread the message of changing the way the world loves. So I thank you very much on that. And I'm sure we'll see each other again down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you.